I'm Jennifer Pearce, and I love this conference. I'm so excited to be here. My first time was last year, the first one they did, and it was just amazing. And the connecting, energy is really special here. So I was really excited that we could come back and that we could help share and present some things this time. So this workshop, I wanted to kind of build this. Hi, welcome. I wanted to kind of build this workshop around something I've had. My husband Brandon and I both have had a challenge with in making unconventional life choices, because we've made a lot, and it's been really challenging because about 7 years ago we started traveling with our family, with our 2 young girls at the time. They were 3 and 5, and kind of what instigated this kind of mind shift for us to do these things different is my mom passing away with cancer when she was diagnosed when she was 49, and then she passed away when she was 50. And for us, that was just such a shock. And we were very much living in this bubble of reality, where we didn't really know much about what was going on in the outside world or what was going on within ourselves. And I had always grown up being very much a people pleaser and a perfectionist and just go along to get along, And so when that happened, when my mom passed away, I was like, maybe, I should figure out why I'm living in the first place and what my heart is telling me, and make sure that I'm feeling like this is a fulfilling experience before I'm all of a sudden not allowed to ask these questions anymore. So that's kind of what started it. And then eventually, 4 years later, I was like, it takes a while, this thought process. And so my husband started this online business, not with the intent of being location independent and traveling, but once he had this business going, we're like, oh, we don't have to stay here anymore. We could go, we could explore. And so we're like, ooh, we want to do that. So we took our girls and we started traveling and homeschooling, which eventually turned into unschooling and then world schooling and whatever that is, right? Our families were like, what are you doing? And then 6 months after we started traveling, we kind of decided this belief system we'd grown up with, our religion, that wasn't working for us either. And so we told them, and they're like, whoa, you're just scaring us, And so from there, we were really wanting kind of emotional support and love, because our whole reality was what's going on, because we didn't really know anymore, because our belief system turned out to be, for us, not working, and it didn't make enough sense to us anymore. And so we kind of needed love and support, and they kind of needed their hands held, and we didn't have the capacity to do that and be there for them, and they didn't have the capacity to be there for us. And so it just created this really difficult dynamic. But for me, it was all these loving, supportive relationships just kind of poof, they were just disappeared. So all this foundation of that, I was like, it kind of just happened all at once, and I felt disillusioned, and I felt disappointed, and I felt really emotionally abandoned. We're talking about when we make different choices. Yeah, so I don't know, have you guys ever felt like that in your life, where you've been really excited about these decisions you've been making for yourself and your family, and your loved ones who you really rely on their emotional support and their love, they're just kind of whoa, and they can't give it to you, and they can't be excited and supportive. Have you ever felt that way? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So it was difficult, and we were having a great time. We were traveling the world, we were exploring, we were experiencing all these cool things, and it was amazing on one hand. On the other hand, we were like, oh my gosh, this is so emotionally difficult. Most of my mind was taken up with ruminating about these negative thoughts and resentments and blame. Welcome, Jerry. And I was just like, how do I stop this? How do I get like emotionally balanced and enjoy my amazing life that I'm trying to create for myself and my family? And so it took a long time. And in the process, I just got like more emotionally disconnected from myself and my loved ones, and even our own little family, my husband and daughters and I, we were struggling, because when you're struggling emotionally in your relationship with yourself and your loved ones, it just affects everybody. So what did I do at this point? And I look back in hindsight and I think it's kind of funny, because I think we all do this at some point in our life, where we kind of embark on our own personally designed like crash course, right? So, I mean, what else can we do? Like, our life doesn't come with an instruction manual, you know, life without instructions. We sometimes wish it did, you know, but it doesn't. And so we can't really give each other any easy answers, you know, like even if we've come through a process and we feel like, oh, like I know so much more than I did before and I'm feeling so empowered, and how do we really translate that to helping other people, you know, who are struggling? And so, you know, we can help each other to a certain degree, but a lot of it has to be our own inner work, and we have to kind of dig deep, and we have to have the motivation and the these hard experiences to help us to dig deep. Otherwise, we kind of just want to avoid these things, you know. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be authentic, you know. And so that's kind of where I was at. And what I discovered was self-compassion was really helpful in that moment. I discovered, you know, my relationship with myself is what all my other relationships are a reflection of. Like, we really work as mirrors for each other, you know? And so if we can like keep that reflection clean and polished, like we can see ourselves in others. And then we can like get these close connected relationships, the support that we want from each other. So I was like, okay, so what kind of clouds up the mirror, the reflection? And it's all sorts of things. Like, I had a whole list here, like misunderstandings, judgments, you know, ego-driven behaviors, I'm right, you're wrong thinking, or if only you would do this, you know, then everything would be fine type of thinking. And, you know, that's not really what works, because what actually works is us, you know, looking inside and saying, how am I being, you know, not meeting my own needs? Like, what am I expecting others to do for me that I'm not doing for myself? So here I was having all these ruminating negative thoughts and not knowing how to feel better, and I'm like, okay, so these feelings are pointing me to the fact that I need more love and compassion. And I think I'm needing it from others, but I'm needing it more from myself, because I can't control what others do, you know? So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna give myself love and compassion. And that kind of looked like, oh, I'm so sorry you're having such a hard time. It's understandable. You've been through a lot, you know, and like just really just kind of those kinds of things. And it was surprisingly helpful. I was like, oh, well, gosh, these ruminating thoughts aren't going anymore, and I had no idea how to get rid of them before. So it can be really simple, you know, how you started out. But so we're going to be talking about 4 tools that I've discovered were guidelines helpful for me. So the first one, and my stepmom actually kind of introduced this tool to me about the time we left our religion. She was like, her and my dad were like, oh no, how can we help you guys? So, but it was really helpful, this tool of mindfulness that she gave to me. And I'd heard about it before, but I never really explored it and looked into it. So what is mindfulness? Does anybody have like an idea of what it is exactly? Because it's kind of a nebulous concept, right? Like, I put it on your sheet. There's a definition there, and I'll just read it. It's a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, and it's used as a therapeutic technique. So basically, it's kind of that idea of being here now. And as a very high-strung person, I mean, especially before we started traveling, I was really high-strung, and I was like always like had this generalized like anxiety going on, you know. And so this tool of mindfulness, I noticed it really helped me just kind of calm down and just be like, like, where am I holding tension? Oh yeah, I've got to remember to breathe. Oh, that feels better, you know. And like, what is my body doing, you know? Like, it just kind of grounds me a little bit in the present moment, and I'm not like distracted by all these thoughts of the past and the future and whatever else keeps me from kind of enjoying what's happening in my life right now and experiencing it. And I had always been kind of low energy, and I think it really helped, like, when I'm paying attention to what's happening now, like, all of that stuff kind of fuels me, and it feels like it's a refill for my energy tank, because I'm not focusing on all these other draining things that are taking my energy away. So that was really helpful. And then there's a Dr. Zindel Segal, a clinical psychologist and researcher, who said, mindfulness can help us become more aware of our challenging thoughts and patterns. This awareness reduces the grip of those thought loops and storylines. So it's really exciting, the research they've been doing about the brain, where this neuroplasticity, where you can change these thought loops and patterns. So you have these habitual, maybe, things that you're used to thinking, ruminating negative thoughts or whatever. And then you can actually choose to create new habits and pathways, and eventually the old ones just kind of start disappearing and the new ones become strengthened. And so that's what I was like, oh, that's what I need to do, you know? I need to like get those good ones going that lead me where I want to be instead of into this downward spiral. And so I started practicing that. So when I'd have these thought loops, I'd be like, oh yeah, self-compassion. Okay, now I'm going on the right path again, you know? So that was really helpful. And then, I don't know, I don't think I'm the only one who suffers with this, but do you guys ever find yourselves on some of those habitual thought loops and patterns and storylines? Yeah, good. I'm not the only one. Not good, but we're figuring out how to overcome it. So, oh dear.
It's over there too.
Yeah. So the one I used earlier to turn it on.
Yeah, you just press up, keep pressing it up.
Yeah. There's lots of buttons. Okay, so the way it works, Dr. Segal said, the practice of mindfulness allows us to make a key attentional shift so we can approach our experiences from experiential mode rather than a narrative mode. I know that I'm not even caught up in my head as much as, you know, some people are in my family, but it's just very much like we're in this narrative mode all the time, telling stories about things instead of actually feeling them and experiencing them in our bodies and our emotions. The brain research indicates that this shift makes tangible changes to our minds, so focusing on experiential rather than narrative. And that training in mindfulness enables this shift to occur even in the presence of sad thoughts and feelings, which we normally tend to identify ourselves with our sad thoughts and feelings, like our negative emotions, and don't realize we actually have a choice. We can like increase our capacity for choice and self-care by saying, oh, I'm not this emotion, I'm just experiencing this emotion, and I actually created this emotion. And how did I do that? Oh, through my thoughts and these stories I was telling myself about what I'm experiencing and observing. So it's really empowering, helps us to make those distinctions. So I'd just like to start doing our first practice here in our workshop. It's a mindfulness practice called the 3-minute breathing space, which is one of the core practices taught and repeated throughout mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It's created by Dr. Siegel and a couple of his colleagues. And it's intended to help bring formal mindfulness practice into moments of everyday life. And it's considered the most important practice in their program. So the link to this is also on your handout. So I'm just going to take you through it for the next few minutes, and then anytime you want to practice, if you like it, if you think it's helpful, then you can go to the webpage and find it there also. All right, so let's just take a nice upright posture, and you can do this sitting or standing. I've actually done standing meditations before, and I think they're really nice because it engages me a little bit more than sitting, but I also like sitting. So, welcome.
Sorry.
So let's go ahead and close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. It might help you in the exercise a bit. And the first step is becoming aware. So go ahead and bring your awareness to your inner experience and ask, what is my experience right now? What thoughts are going through your mind? As best you can, acknowledge thoughts as mental events, perhaps putting them into words. What feelings are here? Go ahead and turn toward any sense of emotional discomfort, unpleasant feelings, or good feelings. Acknowledge their presence. What body sensations are here right now? Perhaps you can just quickly scan your body to pick up any sensations of tightness or bracing. Okay, now step 2 is gathering. Redirect your attention to focus on the physical sensations of the breath. Moving close to the sense of the breath in the abdomen, feeling the sensations of the abdominal wall expanding as the breath comes in, and then falling back as the breath goes out. Follow the breath all the way in and all the way out, using the breathing to anchor yourself in the present. If the mind wanders away at any time, gently escort it back to the breath. Okay, the last step is expanding. Expand the field of your awareness around your breathing, so it includes a sense of the body as a whole, your posture, and your facial expression. If you become aware of any sensations of discomfort, tension, or resistance, take your awareness there by breathing into them on the in-breath. Then breathe out from those sensations, softening and opening with the out-breath. Open your eyes whenever you're ready, and as best you can, bring this expanded awareness to the next moments of your day.
Just humming just got difficult for me. I don't know what it was.
Fire alarm
Fire
test.
alarm test, yeah. The day that 2 days ago.
So sorry.
It's just happening now, yeah. You could have been. I know.
So how did that feel? You can maybe, while you've still got it fresh in your memory, if there's anything you want to remember about that experience, you can go ahead and write it down on your handout, or if there's anything. And go ahead and feel free to share anything that was cool about that experience for you, or that was difficult, or maybe whatever thoughts you might have, if you have any.
For me, I was just way too distracted. I couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
Which I think normally I definitely
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a challenge, like, because normally we've just got all this stuff going on, and it's challenging to disconnect, and then when we kind of figure out how to a little bit more over time, like, we're like, wow, like, it feels really cool to just be able to disconnect from stuff, but it's a challenge at first. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody?
I wanted to ask you, I was so much in the whatever I was feeling, but I didn't hear the second part of what you said. Can you please repeat it?
Oh yeah, the second part, let's see. So is that step 2?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So step 2 was gathering. So it was redirecting our attention to focus on the physical sensations of the breath. And so that was, we feel the sensations in the abdomen, like expanding and contracting, and then we do the breath all the way in and all the way out, and then if we get distracted from paying attention to the breath, then we just, when we notice, we redirect our attention back. Yeah.
So for myself, pushing things out doesn't really work for me. So I find, I forget where I heard this before, but like accepting it in.
Yeah.
So being in a large crowd or a big room where there's like a lot of sensory or a lot of noise, or just like it gets too much.
Yeah.
If instead of trying to push it away, I accept it as it's happening. And I almost welcome it to happening and deal with it, and then I'm able to either be in that surrounding or push it out. But I need to accept before.
Yeah.
And that was something that really changed things for me, because I was always just kind of trying accepting either it's a sound or something happening or something like internally, wherever it is, accepting it and feeling it.
Yeah.
And giving the power over it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sure that would be helpful. Yeah.
Like somebody had said it's very changed things drastically for me.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that myself in my own experience, and so I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't thinking about it in this context. But it's so true. Like we're used to resisting things without even being consciously aware that we're resisting things, and when we can open up to it and just experience what's happening, yeah, it's like you said, then you're more aware and conscious of, okay, what's going on and what do I want, and yeah, so helpful. Yeah. Okay. So I've also included on your handout another meditation. We're not going to do that in the workshop today, but that one's a meditation, a basic meditation to strengthen neural connections. So you can check that one out later too. It's a really cool one. So let's talk specifically about emotional mindfulness for a moment. So that one has been really important for me because like I kind of alluded to earlier, we're the ones who are creating our emotions, which I kind of, growing up for some reason, I got this idea that it was my job to manage the emotions of others and it was their job to manage my emotions. And that's just all backwards, so I don't know why I thought that. And then, a few years back, I was like, oh, is that what I've been thinking? Oh, that doesn't make any sense. No wonder I'm having problems, Like sometimes these things take a while to for us to clue into what's happening. So, the feelings we have come from the thoughts that we focus on and the stories we tell ourselves. And so mindfulness practices are kind of like a type of mental, emotional hygiene, Like they kind of keep things clear for us and clean so we can see clearly. And so the technique for emotional mindfulness, kind of like, what she was saying, is to just become really curious about your experience and your emotions, and just kind of treat them like honored guests in your house, and just realize that they have important messages to give you. And if you're present with them and listen carefully and receive them and be open to them, then you'll learn how to proceed and how to do so in a beneficial way. Hi! Welcome. emotional mindfulness. So some things that I've noticed can help is we can ask ourselves questions like, what am I feeling right now? Or what am I resisting feeling right now? Because sometimes we start tensing against something. I have this practice where I've just learned to regularly throughout the day tune into my body and be like, where am I holding tension? And just release it. And that kind of helps me realize what I've been in resistance to, because I'm like, oh, I was holding tension, and then I released it, and then a few minutes later I'm holding tension again, and I'm like, oh, release it. What was I holding tension to? It just helps you become more aware of what you're resisting and what you need to look at a little bit closer, instead of just like subconsciously just resisting and tensing against it. Okay, so there is a psychotherapist, her name's Elaine Smukler, and she says all emotions show up in our bodies in ways that are unique to us. So by simply being able to label what's going on in our thoughts, emotions, and body, it calms our brains down. So that's what I noticed through this practice. I was like, oh, so I'm just noticing, and I'm noticing I don't need to be all tense and be in resistance to this. But I was doing it subconsciously, so it calmed me down. And also, I thought it was interesting, just as we can experience a mix of feelings at any given moment. If anybody was in the feelings workshop yesterday, she talked about the feelings cards, the feelings and needs cards. And, so she had some examples of experiences that she's had, and that one of the other women in the group, the participants, shared her experience. And there were a lot of emotions that come out of one experience, and a lot of needs associated with each emotion that you're feeling. And so it's common for one feeling to have others behind or underneath it. So for example, if you're feeling hurt, this could include a mixture of feeling sad, disappointed, and perhaps even scared. If you're feeling jealous, this could include heavy-heartedness, fear, and sadness. Excitement can sometimes have hope embedded in it, for example. So it just helps us understand what's going on under the surface. Because sometimes, for me, it was such a revelation, one day for me to realize I was angry. I was angry at a certain person when I felt like I was just sad, but I was actually not addressing the anger. Or for example, sometimes when we're feeling really angry, we realize there's sadness underneath, so it can be kind of swapped sometimes. But just paying attention is important. So once we develop our ability for this emotional mindfulness, it helps us manage the tool of the second tool that I want to cover that's on your worksheet is emotional responsibility, which is a tool of emotional empowerment. And when we kind of learn how to use this tool a little better, like in my life, it's just amazing. It's amazing how much better I feel. Because I've learned how to make friends, with my emotional visitors, and I can see more clearly how to choose an empowered response. And so I'm able to take more responsibility for my own feelings and needs. And then it's true, other people's actions can contribute to meeting our needs, and they can also be the stimulus for our feelings. But we are the ones responsible for our emotional responses and for ultimately meeting our needs, because we can't control other people. So basically, we just want to become really clear about what's going on, and then we can work on this practice of being in a more empowered relationship to ourselves and others moving forward. And it's a frame of mind centered in loving kindness, compassion, patience, and respect for ourselves and others. So there's this aspect that always comes into emotional responsibility. I struggled with it in these thought patterns that I had so often, where I just want to blame other people, or I just have these feelings of resentment. And that comes across to others, whether we're consciously trying to hide that, I know, I don't ever want people to feel that energy for me, But if I'm feeling it inside, they're going to feel it, even if I'm trying to put a different, face on it, So, it's really important that we feel inside what we're trying to project on the outside. And so what I've noticed is, no one likes to be judged or blamed. I don't like to be judged or blamed, even if I've done something that maybe deserves it, right? At the time, you just can't see that. And it's really interesting because I want to be seen for my intentions and my humanity, and I want people to understand me and where I'm coming from and why I do things. And we all kind of feel like that. And so one thing that really helped me to feel differently about things inside, and also then to be able to communicate better with other people, is this idea of claiming my feelings. So, we can say, instead of saying someone or something made us feel angry, sad, whatever, we could say, and this idea is from the nonviolent communication, we could say, when I see or hear whatever we did, see or hear, I feel this way. So it's really paying attention to what's going on inside without putting blame on external things, whether it be a person or a situation. So we really have to be careful here that we use pure emotion words. So we don't want to use a word like, I feel abused or I feel manipulated, because that has a judgment embedded in it, and that other person is going to immediately react to feeling blamed and judged. So we just have to make sure that the words we're using aren't going to have that effect on them. So we're not going to do it today, but on your handout there is an exercise called Claiming Our Feelings. So if you think you'd like more practice with this, because it is actually really difficult. It's easy to do when we're not feeling emotionally triggered, but when we are, it's actually really difficult. So if you feel like you want more practice, then that exercise is on your handout, and you can go ahead and practice that. Because how we engage with our emotions is what kind of shapes this overarching feeling signature of our life. And that's a really empowering thing to get better at. So it's kind of like an emotional workout. When we have these challenging situations and we think of it as an emotional workout, this opportunity to really strengthen these muscles, then it kind of helps us to get that motivation to do better and get to a more empowered place. So I put on the handout also lots of helpful questions that I've noticed have helped me, when I'm in situations like this, to kind of get a more clear picture of what's going on. So the first one, where does this emotional disturbance come from in myself? Or what am I in resistance to or in fear of in this situation? And why? Or what do I perceive my needs to be in this situation? Or is it possible that I'm misunderstanding or not understanding deeply enough what's happening for the situation or the other person or myself? Or what would bring me toward what I want? And there's a whole bunch of questions there. So I'll just let you guys look over those when you're having some free time. And one other thing that really helped me with this is trying to imagine other people are just always doing the best they can. Because when I look at myself, I'm never intentionally trying to hurt anybody or cause difficulties in my relationship, and I don't think anybody ever really is intentionally trying to do that. We're all just trying to do the best we can, and what we're doing is the best that we are capable of doing at the time. And so that really helps foster compassion, right, for ourselves and for other people. And this quote was really cool. I'm just gonna, does anybody want to read it for me? I'd like to hear somebody else's voice a bit more than my own. You want to? Okay. Thank you so much, Rona.
Reality is much more complex than any judgment of right or wrong encourages you to believe. When you really understand the ethical, spiritual, social, economic, and psychological forces that shape individuals, you will see that people's choices are not based on a desire to hurt. Instead, they are in accord with what they know and what worldviews are available to them. Most are doing the best they can, given what information they've received and what problems they're facing. And this is a quote from Michael Miller, an American political activist.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, that's one thing that my husband and I actually, go ahead, yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear her.
Oh, yeah. Do you want?
I'll just read it quickly again.
Yeah, no problem. That's one thing my husband and I actually really struggled with. We had this right-wrong worldview growing up. My husband and I, we had this worldview of right and wrong growing up. And he's saying in this quote, it's not about right or wrong, right? So even after we left this worldview of right or wrong with this belief system we grew up with, we were still functioning under that same mental process. As we left our religion, we're like, now we're doing the right way and they're doing the wrong way. You know what I mean? And so we still had this dynamic going on that took us a while to realize that it wasn't beneficial and it wasn't true. It wasn't right for us to be thinking that way. Okay, so basically compassion is the next tool that we'll be talking about. And it's kind of a complex subject, compassion, but it's basically about taking action to help alleviate the suffering of ourselves and others. So you have empathy, which is about feeling with others. And then compassion takes it a step further, and it's actually like taking these feelings and kind of suffering with others to the point where you want to help, you're motivated to help, or motivated to help yourself if you're the one suffering. And so it's really a frame of mind centered in loving kindness, concern, generosity, and respect. And there's another quote if somebody would like to read for me about compassion. Would you, Brandon? Thank you so much.
When people hear the word compassion, they tend to think of kindness. But scientific study has found the core of compassion to be courage. The courage to be compassionate lies in the willingness to see into the nature and causes of suffering, be that in ourselves, with others, or humanity in general. We are built from genes that have been evolving over millions of years. Those genes built our brains and our bodies. We didn't choose them. And these bodies and brains are fragile. We're subject to injuries, a multitude of diseases, decay, and eventual death. Just as we have come to understand the importance of hygiene to reduce the risk of disease, so we must learn how to build socially just and supportive environments that nurture the best in us. All over the world, academic researchers are revealing that by cultivating compassion, we stimulate many physiological systems that are excellent for our health and happiness. It promotes pro-social and ethical behavior that we can all benefit from. We can start with ourselves by spending a few moments each day thinking about how we would be if we were at our compassionate best, how we might think and act. Then we might imagine a difficulty in our lives. Breathe deeply and slowly, and create a friendly inner voice tone, and imagine how this wise, compassionate part of us might address the problem. It doesn't take long to see that this would be different to how the angry part or anxious part of us might respond. That side that often just emerges and wants to control us. The more we take time to imagine ourselves at our compassionate best, the greater the chances are that we will become like this, more rooted, caring, and assertive.
Thank you. So I thought it would be fun to just try that for a moment with each other, or with ourselves here together. So go ahead if you'd like to. Just close your eyes if you feel comfortable, if you think that would help. And imagine yourself at your compassionate best for just a moment. How you might think or act. Maybe especially think of a difficult situation that you've had recently or maybe are currently engaged in. breathe, make sure to breathe deeply and slowly. And create that friendly inner voice tone. And imagine how this wise, compassionate part of you might address the problem. Just take your time and relax into it. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes and maybe jot anything down that you might want to remember from that experience. And if anybody has anything you'd like to share about that, then feel free to go ahead and share. It takes a while to process sometimes those things, but that's actually been one of the most helpful things for me. I kind of think of it as my higher self, right? Like just that part of me that's always kind of knows what to do, even though I don't always want to listen, or even though it doesn't always seem easy to listen. But just be like, oh, okay, so what would that higher part of me say or do? Like, what would I imagine watching somebody else or myself do that I would really admire in this situation, for example? That's another way to think of it. That's been helpful for me.
So, Jen, are you finding that with this practice that more frequently when you're in a situation that is difficult, that you're able to bring this into the situation?
Yeah, with this practice, it's been really helpful. This is one of my main centering practices that I have on my list. Like I have this whole list of centering practices, and this is one of them that I use most often, I think, because it has been so helpful. Yeah.
I'll share. Mine was pretty specific. So I'm here with my daughter. We don't know, we're in a big homeschooling group, homeschooling, unschooling, like it's everybody in this one group. So I took my daughter out of school in January, but so a lot of her friends are still school friends. So there's not a lot of connection. So we were coming here to really, all right, let's really engage. So she signed up for the talent show and then said, you know what, Mom, I'm not really feeling comfortable. So I had to really sit with that, and I also practice nonviolent communication, and this is a very integral part of my everyday world as well. So I was trying to just, sit with her, and we do the feelings and needs cards each morning before we come down. We didn't do it today because we released a monarch butterfly this morning that we brought with us, and he came out this morning, so we had to release him.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, what came up for me was my intention for coming here was to really maybe, meet other families and have her leave here with some connections. But she's very introverted, so I have to really honor her and go, okay, like I don't want to push her. She's like, I really, and she loves, her daughter Emily, she played with Marie yesterday and really connected with her. I was real excited about it. So I said, well, they're going to be there, why don't you? And she's like, I think I really just need to observe. I think I just want to watch. This is my first year. So I really just want to honor her. But at the same time, I'm sitting with, there's that line of wanting to, no, try it. Because I know on the ride home, she'll probably say, oh, we shouldn't have done it. So I'm sitting with this, trying to be present to her and hearing her, which again, we didn't really get to fully connect yet this morning. About it, but I'm struggling with that a little bit because I want to be fully connected while I'm here, yet I'm also sensing, she's kind of ready and she's kind of done, and part of me is too like, okay, I think I'm ready to, so then I feel disappointed in myself, like, oh, I said I was coming for one reason, but now leaving maybe before that's fulfilled. You know? So I'm just trying to honor her and me and what's coming up for both of us.
Yeah. And what's that one reason for you?
I'm physically uncomfortable. I'm having some physical pain, and I'm just like sitting like I want to walk. I want to be outside. I'm realizing what I realized yesterday. I was getting like feeling depressed. It's like I need to be outside. I need to hear fountains. I need to hear birds, and I need to see the trees.
Yeah.
And so we took a walk just around because the butterfly was like the cocoon was getting darker and darker. So I said we need to like know where we're going to release them, you know, because I don't want to just put them anywhere. So we took a walk yesterday, and you know, and then this morning we woke up and there he was, a full butterfly. So I was like, okay, let's go outside. So yeah, so for me, I think it's just it's a bunch of things actually. Like there's a lot pulling me back home. You know, things I need to do when I get there. So I'm not fully feeling present 100% here, even when I'm here.
I guess, the same for maybe, like with your daughter, how you were explaining how she would feel like, oh, I didn't quite get, I should have done this or I should have done that. Like think about for yourself too, like maybe what are those things that you would feel having left, like regretting, you know, and just make sure that you take care of those things for yourself.
Well, I am. That's
Also,
up here, and there's another workshop I want to do after this, and then I feel pretty complete. So I feel like, okay, after tonight, I do feel pretty complete because I do want to get home tomorrow versus Friday. We're going to be Friday. I'm like, Alright, so I feel okay, but I want to push her. There's that piece of me that really wants to say, just do it.
The talent show.
Yeah, I mean, she's been in shows, she's in plays, she sings, but it's like, she really wants to just observe. So I feel like I need to just step back and let her just observe.
And that's how you feel, and just honoring that decision and just saying, this is what I feel the best about, despite the fact that I wish this.
Yeah, she's done it before, and I haven't pushed her, and then she'll go, you're right, I probably should have, and I'm like, no, next time.
Yeah.
So every time I'm like, is this the next time that I should be pushing, you know? Like,
I can totally relate with your daughter though, because Brandon, go ahead, Jay.
I have a similar experience with my son Graham, who plays guitar. And for the first couple of days, I was, inviting him to think about it, whatever. He's kind of like, I'm not sure, and I can tell it's mostly just because he's doing some nervousness. So last night, instead of just trying to say, why don't you do it, I shared more about how I was feeling about it, and how I noticed how much you love to perform for people and have a lot of fun, and I know others would enjoy that, and there's some feelings, desire to help you share that talent or whatever. So I just kind of shared from how I was feeling. And I think that had an impact on me. A couple hours later, he just picked up what the songs he's going to play, and he's signed up. But it was less of a push and more of a just sharing how I was feeling, what I wanted for him, and what if I could offer, and I just left that there for him. And I think I gave just one of the gentlemen
to
make a choice.
Of his own.
At the same time, I just kind of released any expectation whether you do it or not. I just kind of left that there, and then just was very open to whatever happened. So it kind of released me on that too.
Yeah, and I think that's where I haven't gotten to, like where I'm releasing the expectation because I haven't yet released that. But I have said, okay, whatever you feel you need, but this is what she loves, and I'm like, just reminding her, remember how good you feel. After you get off the stage or whatever, like you're so excited and happy, and she's like, I know, but I really just feel, I just want to observe. Okay.
Yeah.
So observe what you probably will do.
That's good. Like he was saying, sometimes it helps you to just express your feelings about it to your children. Because I notice that I do that a lot. Like if I really want something for my kids, then I'm making it all about them and to them too, the way I talk about it, when really I should be explaining my feelings to them, because that's what's really up for me, that's creating this,
I appreciate that, because that may shift, even just shift me, and like the outcome is the same. Like, I appreciate that.
Maybe you came to me a few hours earlier and said, Mom, do you think I should sign up for the technician? We had talked about this at home. We there's just a lot of repeated chords, and so like I'm very self-doubt. Well, okay, let's work with that, you know, and we could vary it up a little bit. And so I gave him a few suggestions, and then I realized that I think he was just coming to me saying, "Wow, am I good enough?" And I'm like, you know what, because I had an insecurity when I was younger, I still feel it. And I knew I just needed to reflect that. And the decision is his, but I want him to know that I know this. And I said, you have a gift to share. And then it's up to you what you do. Whatever you do, people will be blessed from it. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And it's such a supportive environment here to do that, especially if you have a little doubt, you know, like people are just going to love and support you no matter what. So, yeah. All right, awesome. Anybody else have anything they wanted to share with their experience with that exercise? I think we're good. Okay. All right, so self-compassion. First of all, let's finish talking about one of the best ways to show compassion with other people. Does anybody have an idea about what that might be? That one of the best ways to show compassion to somebody else in general? What was that?
Please tell us.
I didn't catch.
I said, please tell us.
Oh yes, I know. This was a revelation to me, actually. It's to be fully present with someone. So, yeah, and you know, I was reading a nonviolent communication book. It's a new one called Connecting Across Differences, which is where I have a lot of my material from. And I was reading the chapter on empathy, and I was like, what? So you're not supposed to like say, oh, I had an experience like that, or here, let me give you my advice, or, you know, you're just supposed to compassionately listen and be there with people. And I was like, that's really difficult. Like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? But like, that was such a revelation to me, because that's not what I usually do. I'm like, oh, I want to fix it. I want to help them. You know, like that's just what we want to do. And we can't really do that. You know, we can tune them into their own experience by giving them, like holding space for them to express their experience and learn from what they're expressing, you know, to us, you know, and just holding that space for them is really the most compassionate thing we can do for people. Because like that feelings workshop that I was in yesterday, she was talking about how when people feel heard, it equates to feeling loved, right? Yeah, and that's all we really want anyway. We just want love. We just want to feel loved, seen. Yeah. So a mentor of mine, Jan Lundy, she's an interspiritual director and author. She has a really nice, simple practice for this. And this is her practice. Make eye contact. Consider making eye contact using soft eyes, so we don't want to scare people, you know. Soft eyes. Look at this person through the lenses of love, so have this intention of love. And then listen with your heart, not with your rational mind. Don't speak or jump in to offer your opinion or your advice. Refrain from expressing how you experience something similar. Let the spotlight remain on your companion, or sometimes if you want to practice this on yourself, just keep it right there. Just be there, being you, a kind and generous person who has the ability to truly listen. So the most important thing is your intention of love, non-judgment. Yeah, so just holding space for them. So I was hoping we could practice this together right now, just for a few moments, where we can take turns listening to each other in full presence. And maybe we could talk about, for example, if you need something to talk about, an idea would be maybe what unschooling looks like right now in your family or something like that. And remember, it's called a practice for a reason. It's not called a perfection, right? Like, I'm a perfectionist, so I want to do things perfect, but it's a practice. And so if we just allow ourselves to practice without expecting perfection, we'll actually get a lot better a lot quicker, I think. So, because we'll be more compassionate with ourselves. And so we're all just learning here, so go ahead and find a partner and just spend like maybe a couple minutes for each person to talk while the other person does compassionate listening and holding space. And so we'll just go ahead and do that, and then so a couple minutes each, and then trade rolls. And I don't know if there's an odd or even number here. Even. Good. So I could partner if somebody needs one, but it looks like you guys are pretty good. So find somebody and go ahead and start.
Over time.
Everybody. I hate to interrupt. I'm sure you're having a great connecting, empathizing, compassionate experience. All right. So does anybody want to share, was that a difficult experience, or was it easier than you expected, or more difficult, or did you feel like you were able to connect at a place with your partner that was loving and non-judgmental and really holding the space for them? Does that feel different than your normal conversations, having that focus? Or do you feel like you're usually able to kind of do that pretty well? Or, I don't know. What did you think? Anything come to mind?
It's definitely different when I'm having a conversation without two other little people interrupting it. And having a conversation over 5 hours instead of 2 minutes. Difference there.
Yes.
You have to be in many stages of emotion.
Yeah. It's really true. Yeah, I know, that's very appreciated. It's easier to focus on those things. Yeah. Anybody else have anything that was interesting?
I feel like when you do that, there's a lot more space for understanding of how the other person thinks. Even if Cultivating is my friend and I think that I know her, but listening to her today just brought to my awareness other things of her that I don't know, I never really captured, or so it was a deeper way of listening.
I love that. That's what I
Realizing who she is.
Yeah.
I noticed that because I had the intention of only listening, I noticed a few what's the word? Where you're trying to do something, you want to do something. Motivation, whatever it was. I felt the desire, I guess I'll say, for lack of a better word, to kind of jump in with my own comments, judgments, encouragements, whatever, and to be aware of that and to just not, but just to hold the space and listen was interesting, just to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know
I mean,
that.
so often in my conversations, I tend to, even if it's just like and I still do a little bit of a nod or a smile or something, you know, like I don't just want to be stone-faced talking to people, but I think those things have an effect. Those very subtle ways that we communicate with each other when we're listening have an effect on how the other person is receiving this and how supported they feel in sharing. But if you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden they wince at you or something, you
Yeah.
selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, a different consciousness. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Each process.
Yeah.
That maybe have become so habitual and you don't think about them. But they do have an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that practice, and I think I've been able to pick up a lot of that stuff too as I've been thinking more about it, and it's fascinating. It just makes you more aware of what's happening with yourself and with other people, and it's really powerful, I think. So I definitely want to practice that more. And then one of the other things about compassion we've already kind of covered is self-compassion. There's a quote, if I could have somebody read this one, by Kristen Neff. She's really big into the self-compassion stuff. But anybody? Yeah. Thank you.
According to Kristen Neff, a psychology professor at the University of Texas, self-compassion is treating yourself with the same kindness, care, compassion as you would treat those you care about, your good friends, your loved ones. The research shows that self-compassionate people are more likely to take responsibility for their misdeeds, apologize for what they did wrong, and repair whatever harm they caused. Caring for yourself, not wanting yourself to suffer, it's not self-indulgent, it's not selfish. It leads to better relationships. It's quite remarkable how much research there is in supporting these ideas.
Thank you. I think we kind of do in our society. We don't want to be seen as selfish or self-indulgent, but we also need to be able to take care of ourselves in the ways that are helping us to get our needs met, so that then we can also be there for other people. And again, my mentor, John Lundy, she gives a good practice for this. We won't do it now, but it's on your handout, so you can practice that whenever you want to. She says, take a moment to create a list of all those things that you would love to enjoy or experience in your day-to-day life. Things that bring you personal ease, joy, or inner calm. And keep that list close and check in with yourself to see if you are actually doing the things on your self-care list. Like I was telling Rowena, I have this big centering practice list for myself. And they're just things that I've noticed over time that I kind of go to in those difficult moments that really help me center myself. And it's a self-compassionate practice. And there's different things that I do. And I didn't write the list down for a long time. But then I realized, maybe I should, because when I am struggling emotionally, it's harder for me to access those things, And so if I have a list, I can just go to it and just be like, oh yeah, here's a whole bunch of things that will help me. And then I can just choose one and it helps. So I found that really helpful for me. And then, so I'll move on to this last little section on compassionate communication, which is basically NVC, so it's another word for NVC. And that is communicating in a way that increases awareness, trust, and understanding as we seek to validate the experiences, emotions, and needs of each individual to ensure that everyone is cared for. So like we practice, this holding space in love and non-judgment, that's really the foundation for this compassionate communication. And there's a whole bunch of things involved with this. And I love what Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NVC, said. He said, we come closer to the truth when we connect with what's alive in people than when we just listen to what they think. So NVC gets you below just the thoughts. And so you're connecting at the level of emotions, needs, and then strategies to meet your needs, which are called requests in nonviolent communication. So the basic idea here is that by expressing our experience via observations, feelings, and needs, and then making a request to meet our needs, we are simply stating our experience in a way that can be easily heard and understood. So it's just like a method for us to be able to express what's happening with ourselves to others and to ourselves. because it can feel like all a jumble sometimes when we're identifying with our emotions. And okay, no problem. So about observations, there are just a few key things we should know about each of these 4 things. So observations involve an objective, concrete description of what you've experienced. So just like you'd get if you were video recording, like it doesn't have any interpretations or evaluations, it's just the straight observation. And then like what you've seen or heard or thought. And then requests involve a clear, positive, and doable account of what you'd like to see happen. So when we see positive, it's about focusing on what you'd like to happen instead of what you don't want. Because when we're focused on what we do want, that's what we get. So when we're just focused on what we don't want anymore, that doesn't help us know what we do want unless we consciously think about, okay, so this is what I don't want, so what does that point me to, what I do want instead, and then focusing on that. And then our thoughts about our observations lead to our feelings, which in turn point us to our needs. And then from there, we formulate strategies to meet our needs in the form of requests. And the whole goal here with these steps is to help establish and maintain an open-hearted connection in our communication with others. It just helps us move forward in a unified way. And you know, you can do little requests in there too, called observation requests, where you check in with each other. How are you feeling about this? Or, you know, like, to keep that harmony going. You just want to make sure we check in at different steps where we're unsure how they might be experiencing our words, or maybe we need clarification on how they're expressing their needs. Like, oh, do you mean this? Or, you know, just so we understand and make sure we're on the same page. So also other helpful things are in our conversations are pacing and clarifying by reflecting, so we can slow down sometimes our dialogues. That can be helpful, because sometimes when we're emotional we start talking really fast and blah, 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 you know, and like slowing it down. And then also, you know, taking breath. Remember to take a breath. That's something I don't do when I'm emotionally like up. It's like, oh yeah, remember to breathe. Yeah, and just pay attention to your body. How are you feeling? What are your needs? Are they being met? Yeah. And it's interesting that I read this, that our feelings simply our feelings connect us to this energy of our needs that drive our life. And 90% of the power of empathy is associated with empathizing with needs, and 10% is associated with empathizing with feelings. So our feelings lead us to the needs, but these needs are what are actually the driving energy, the driving force of our life. Yeah. So our needs are the driving energy of our life. Our feelings simply connect us to this energy. So 90% of the power of empathy is associated with empathizing with needs, and 10% is associated with empathizing with feelings. So the point is to get to the need. Yeah. Yeah.
It gives it a lot more needs.
Yeah. And that's kind of the tricky thing for people to do, I think, because sometimes people feel like their needs are in conflict, so they don't really want to see the need of the other person. They just see their own need, right? But what I like about NVC is that the needs, he says, the needs are never in conflict. Like, you know, like I was saying, mostly it's a need for love, to feel loved, and that's never in conflict. But the strategies, you know, we employ can sometimes be in conflict. But there are many different strategies we can use to meet our needs, and so it's just becoming creative about the strategies we employ. So that was helpful for me. So let's just do another exercise here for a minute regarding needs. Imagine a need as fully met in your life. You can close your eyes if that helps. Reflect on a moment when that need was met, or imagining what it would be like and how it would feel. Including in your body, like just imagine that in your body, everywhere, not just your thoughts. And imagine how that would look and feel, or how it looked and felt when that need was fully met. And then imagining the need is met, check in with your body to see how it responds. See whether you experience lightness, release, or relaxation in any way. And then once you've experienced a shift of this kind, it can be helpful to consider what you may wish to do now to act on, or at least hold with care, these needs that matter to you so much. Yeah, I think so often maybe we don't pay attention to our needs and do this exercise. What would that feel like to have that met? And it just kind of motivates us to do what we need to take care of that and meet that for ourselves. And it can be interesting to role play. Even if it's a past situation, maybe you're disturbed still about a past situation in your life, and you kind of think, well, how would I have liked that situation to go so my needs would be met? How could I have done something differently to make sure my needs were being met in a situation? And I've done that before, and sometimes I do this role play in my mind of, well, I would have said this, and they would have said that, and, like I go through this thing, and then at the end of it, I realize, oh, well, yeah, I got all my needs met, but not really, because this other person, they didn't get their needs met. And I'm like, oh, well, so that, because they didn't get their needs met and I care about this person, my needs also haven't been fully met. And so just paying attention to how it would look in reality, like, what would make sense, like, what would that feel like when you were fully satisfied with everybody's needs being met? All right, so we talked about strategies and needs. So needs, by definition, are intrinsic and intangible. Their values are qualities, and strategies are more like tangible. You go to work, or, yeah, thank you. And so it's good to differentiate those. And we talked about requests. So I think we're almost out of time, so I'll just close really quickly. And there's a whole bunch of information on your worksheet to look over if you have any questions. So we went through mindfulness, which is paying attention deeply. Emotional responsibility, which is the tool of emotional empowerment. Compassion, which is the tool to help alleviate the suffering of self and others. And then compassionate communication, which was the tool for honoring each other's differences. So maybe I would just invite you to, maybe if you have a spare moment later tonight or tomorrow, just look at the worksheet, and if there's any practices you'd like to work more on, just kind of make a plan and to like implement that into your daily routine and just see if it makes a difference for you in the areas that you feel like would be the most helpful. And an interesting paradox in the book that I read, that I mentioned earlier, Connecting Across Differences, is that even though we have no control over others, the choices we make infinitely impact what happens and the choices others make. So we don't have direct control, but we have a lot of influence with our choices. So yeah, we can't really make anybody do anything, but we can help ourselves, and in turn, that can help other people as well. So it is really helpful to remember that, because we are making a difference for others, even though we feel like we can't really control them. And the more we practice this, we realize we don't really want to do that either, but we can have a good influence. And so it's like dancing. The author said it takes two to tango. Once we change our own dance steps, the dance changes, the whole dance changes, right? And so when we develop our skills in compassionate communication, others will also feel those benefits, and gradually their responses may also be reflections of that as well. If we're doing a good job, right? Like if we're being effective for ourselves. And it's true that people in relationships are very fragile. Like I've noticed, like my relationships fell apart for a while. They're very fragile, but they're also very strong and they're very resilient. And so we don't need to feel like we need to do things perfectly, and if we don't, then all is lost, because we're resilient and we're strong, even though we are also fragile. And in my relationships, I'm always discovering deeper layers of understanding, connection, and integration within myself and others. And I love this idea. Have you ever heard, like, it's through the breaks and cracks that the love can enter us? So sometimes we feel like our hearts are broken. I mean, I felt like my heart's been broken a lot. But, like, it's kind of, relationships are really good at kind of getting those breaks and cracks in our heart, right, where the love can actually enter. But, we learn a lot about disappointment and anger and shame and grief and despair in those moments. But we also learn, because we have to, if we want to, survive, right, emotionally, we learn a lot about self-compassion and compassion for others. And maybe that's the only way we could learn those things. So it's been that way for me anyways. And I've actually learned how to truly love through those experiences. And that's helped me feel like I've been able to come fully alive in my life. And so it's been totally worth it, even though it's really difficult. Because it does feel like your world's ending, but in reality it's maybe just beginning. So that's what I want to leave you with, and thank you so much for coming. And I've really appreciated everybody's comments and thoughts and just how dedicated you are to working on this, because it helps all of us. So thank you so much.